This was me exactly 1 year ago. I had no interest in the gym, never touched a weight, and I didn't really care about how my body looked. And in this video, I'm going to talk about my 1 year weightlifting journey, which took me from this to this, and from this to this. Quick disclaimer before this video starts, I'm not trying to say that I'm massive, this is just me talking about my first year of lifting, the mistakes I made and what I would have done differently. So just for some context, I'll put some photos on screen now. I've always been the really skinny kid. You can see in some of these photos, I used to literally just be skin and bones. I used to play football my whole life from early ages of like 2 or 3 up until about 16 when I quit. The photo you're seeing now, I think I was about 8 or 10 years old in this photo, and you can see how skinny I used to be. In these later photos as I got older, I did put a bit of fat on, but I was always remained skinny. That was until 2020. Now in 2020 there was 2 big reasons I gained a lot of body fat. One being COVID, everyone went through it. You were bored, you had nothing to do late at night, you just go to your kitchen and just raid the whole cupboard. So that didn't help. But on top of that, I got ill with a thyroid condition. Now the condition I developed was called hypothyroidism. It's basically where your thyroid is underactive and doesn't produce enough hormones. And what it's resulted in was I'd come home from college and I'd feel like complete crap. I'd feel so tired all the time, absolutely drained, and just have no energy to do anything. And this led to me gaining quite a lot of body fat. I don't think I have many photos of my body during this time, but if I do have any, I'll try and put them on screen now. After this, they put me on medication and I've been fine ever since. Then came the summer of 2022. At this point, I'd gone to university in Lancaster. I'd already been there for 1 year. And I came home in June, late June, as well as did all my friends. And I'd seen that 2 of my friends who'd been hitting the gym consistently for about the last year or year and a half had put on a substantial amount of muscle, and I could see a noticeable change in their bodies, and this made me want to start hitting the gym regularly. Now, like a lot of people, I tried the gym when I was younger, maybe 14, 15, went for about a week and then got sick of it and never went again. And this time I was absolutely determined to not let that happen. I thought to myself, if I just go every day for 3 weeks, force myself to go with my friends, which was actually quite useful because having them there kept me accountable. We had a group chat, and if I saw them going and I didn't go, it sort of almost made me feel bad that they were putting the work in whilst I was just being lazy and not going for no good reason. So for 3 weeks I went every day, and I didn't let myself skip any days. As best I could, I maybe skipped 1, and after that 3 weeks I was absolutely hooked. Now at this point I was fully committed to it and I jumped in the deep end. I started tracking my calories from day 1. Bearing in mind though, I didn't weigh my food. All I would do was scan the barcode in MyFitnessPal on the back of the packet and look at how much of the packet I'd had and try to estimate therefore what weight of that food I was eating. So I was probably off by a few hundred calories every time I was doing this every day, but it was still better than not tracking it at all. And I think this brings me on to my first massive mistake, which was not training legs. I'm sure everyone did it, but for the first 3 months, I think from July till October when I went back to uni, I just didn't train legs. I think it was just because I couldn't be arsed. I just didn't care. I just wanted to build my upper body, and I didn't really care how my lower body looked, so I completely neglected it. I'm actually recording the rest of this video the next day, so that's the reason my t-shirt swapped. And of course, aside from not skipping legs so you have a proportional physique, another big reason you shouldn't be skipping legs really is because legs are the biggest muscle group. So when you train them and when your body's recovering from training legs, you actually release the most amount of growth hormone. So if you train, say, back the day before you did your legs, that extra release of growth hormones go into affect your back gains as well. Now when I was first starting the gym, I used to go to the gym some nights at midnight or even 1 in the morning just so I could practice my form or practice a new movement altogether. And something I actually recommend is go to the gym when it's quiet so you don't feel that self-consciousness of people looking at you. Although in reality no one cares and everyone's too busy concentrating on their own set, if you get that self-consciousness, going at a time where it's really quiet and no one's there helps you just have the confidence to try a new movement, practice it, and if you mess up and drop the weight, who cares because no one's there to see you do it. Just go and practice and really nail your form. Now as I mentioned before, I was sort of half-assed tracking my calories at this point, and I think I was trying to eat about 2,800 a day, which was my maintenance at the time, and I'll put some photos before and afters on screen now. In the first 3 months, sort of the only area really that I saw growth in was my back. I think it was just because I've got the best mind muscle connection with my back as opposed to other muscle groups. Around this time, October time, when I'd gone back to university, was probably when I was training the hardest. At this point I was watching YouTube videos about lifting, about nutrition constantly, and every time I went to the gym I would take a copious amount of pre-workout and push myself to the absolute limit. One downfall of this though was tension headaches. I was at the gym on pec deck, I remember. I was pushing myself to the absolute limit, and on my last set, as I'm trying to contract and bring my arms together, it was just like someone put an axe through the back of my head. The amount of pain I felt in the back was just horrendous. I fell on the floor and it was just awful, and I couldn't go to the gym for about 2 weeks, and these 2 weeks were extremely frustrating because all I wanted to do was lift and there was nothing I could do to stop it. Now, one thing I think this came from was just far too much caffeine. Caffeine restricts your blood vessels, so one thing I'd say, if you're going to start taking pre-workout, don't abuse it. I was taking sometimes 1 scoop, but most of the time 2 scoops before every single workout consistently for months, and this is just something you don't need to be doing. And honestly, now that I don't take it as often, sometimes without caffeine in my system I get a better pump because your blood vessels aren't as restricted. So 2 weeks had passed and I went back to the gym because I'd had enough of being at home, and despite the pain I just focused on breathing properly whilst doing exercises with proper technique, and although the pain was still there, it massively helped, and with time the pain eased and I was able to continue lifting again. Now this brings us to March. Now March is my birthday and I got a food scale and also a body weight scale, so this is when I really started to take things a hell of a lot more seriously. I started weighing all my food to the T, as accurate as I could be about it, and I would start weighing my body weight every morning before I ate anything after I gone to the toilet, and this was something that really helped me. Whilst you're bulking or cutting, you need to know how quickly or how slowly you're gaining or losing weight so you can decide whether you need to increase or lower your calories, and this is something that really helped me speed up my progression. Now around this time is when my diet really cleaned up. I wasn't eating the worst before I got my scales, but it definitely could have improved, and after I got them I cooked almost every meal from scratch basically. Spaghetti bolognese, chicken and rice, pesto, pasta, tuna, pretty basic things mind you, but they were good enough and they tasted good enough to me. One thing I started having more regularly, which I still have almost every breakfast, is protein pancakes, just because they're relatively easy, they taste pretty nice, and having 50 grams of protein for breakfast, low amount of fat, high amount of carbs, it just set me up that even if I didn't manage to get my protein out throughout the rest of the day, I had a 50-gram head start. Now at this point I'm in a heavy bulk. I started bulking in January and I ended the bulk in March because I just got way too fat way too quick. But during this bulk I did make some okay strength gains. I remember I'd never deadlifted at the start, but one time, as I was saying earlier, when I went to Pure Gym once at midnight, I just thought I'd try deadlift whilst no one was around, no one was looking, and I remember struggling to pick up 90 kilo. 90 kilo was probably my max, maybe 100, but it felt really heavy. And then I'll put a video on screen now. My form is horrendous in this, okay, and my form still isn't perfect, but it's getting a lot better. And this is me struggling to hit 150. I think in April time. A couple of weeks ago I posted I hit 170, and in this time I've been cutting and my deadlift's gone up 20 kilo. Now around this time is when I ran into another issue again and I got fat again. Now what happened was I pushed my calories far too high. I was eating 3,600 calories every day at my peak, and I just ended up putting on far too much body fat. It got to the point I had a gut at one point. I was so bloated all the time, I just had a belly constantly. Although with that many calories I was getting an absurd amount of protein in, it didn't really matter, and it didn't really show anything because I couldn't see any of the gains I was making because I just kept getting fatter and fatter and fatter. Then we had a holiday, lads holiday, booked in June, and we were going to Spain. Now on this holiday I didn't want to be as fat as I was now, and from what a research I'd done, I'd found that a longer, slower, more patient diet, more patient cut would reserve more muscle mass and you'd lose less. And only having built the small amount of muscle that I had, I was far too scared to do a fast cut and lose it all. So I started the slowest cut you could have possibly done. I took my maintenance calories, I dropped it by 200, and only when I plateaued would I drop it by another 100. Bearing in mind I hadn't included any cardio at this point, so although I was losing weight, it was incredibly slowly. And by the time the lads holiday rolled around, I honestly lost an okay amount of body fat. It wasn't what I was hoping for. As I said, I'd done it far too slowly, but so I'll put some photos on screen now. I definitely got rid of the gut, which was my main goal. My main goal when starting the cut was just to have a flat stomach again. My plan originally was to finish the cut when the holiday ended and when I got home, but when I got home I wanted to start a bulk, and if you want to start a bulk you need a good body fat, a good base to start from, because you're going to add some fat on a bulk, it's inevitable, and if you've already got too high of a body fat into a bulk, you're just going to get, as I did last time, you're just going to get too fat. And so the cut continued when I got home from the holiday, and although I've wasted all this time with a cut, I'm glad that I've learned from these mistakes and realised where I went wrong, because next bulk and cut that I do, the next ones I do in the future, will be so much quicker, so much better, and waste so much less time, because now I have a much better understanding of where I went wrong and what I'm supposed to be doing differently. There's a few changes I made to make this process easy for myself. I added in a refeed. Refeeds are really useful if you hit a weight loss plateau. It essentially is just eating your maintenance calories or a few hundred calories higher than what you're eating on your deficit, just to allow your body to have a break from it all, and after 2 or 3 days of doing so, you go back to your deficit and continue your weight loss. That really worked well for me and helped a lot. And the second thing, I know it sounds obvious, but I neglected it for too long, just cardio. So I'll walk my dog every morning to get some steps in. At the end of every workout, I'm just doing a 20-minute walk on the treadmill. And from the studies and research that I've read online personally, it seems much better to do slow, steady state cardio such as walking as opposed to high intensity cardio such as running, as this allows your body to use your fat stores as fuel. And that brings us to today. I'll put some photos on screen of what I look like right now. I'm definitely a lot leaner from that first pudgy photo you saw, and honestly I've put on an okay amount of muscle mass for 1 year. All these mistakes I've said in these videos definitely held me back, and if I could do it again and I avoided these mistakes, I would 100% have grown a hell of a lot more than I did. And I'm hoping though, although being past my newbie gains in the second year, I can make the same amount if not more, based on the fact that I now understand a hell of a lot more than when I first started this. So yeah, after all that, this is what exactly 1 year of the gym looked like, tracking my diet and trying to get as big as possible. Thank you for watching.